It is Thursday, the 12th of February, 2026. Welcome to this episode of the State of the Nation Address. My name is Adrian Basson, Editor-in-Chief of News 24. And I'm joined today in our Cape Town studios by my colleague Bongekile Makupe, our Deputy Politics Editor from Johannesburg. We have no water. Welcome, Bongekile. As well as Carol Payton, Writer at Large at News 24 Business. Welcome, Carol. Thanks for joining us tonight. As per usual, we will do a pre-SONA show talking about all the things we expect from President Cyril Ramaphosa's 11th State of the Nation address. I couldn't believe when I did the counting that it is 11 already, since he took over quite dramatically from Jacob Zuma in 2018 as President of South Africa. Of course, election years has two State of the Nation addresses. This is not a national election year, it's only a provincial or a municipal election here. So this will be the only State of the Nation address for this year. And earlier on, Bongekile, we actually had a little chat about whether Ramaphosa will still do a few of these SONA addresses before he steps down as president. Of course, the ANC next year, December in 2027, has a leadership conference where Ramaphosa's fate will be, well, we know he's stepping down. He can't run again. Well, he can technically, but he probably won't.
Yeah.
And when we will have to see if he stays on as president of the country after that. But here we are. It is 2026. We've seen the visuals from our colleagues from Parliament, politicians arriving, MPs, some of them in high fashion, others more normal clothing. We saw some protests from the EFF, the MK outside of Parliament. We also saw some ministers being delegated to attend to the water crisis in Joburg, won't be in Cape Town tonight, and we'll get to that in a bit as we wait for the start of this year's SONA at 7 o'clock, which will be broadcast live here on News 24, so you don't have to go anywhere. Colleagues, I want to start with a quote, and then I'll tell you from who this quote is. Maybe you remember it. And it reads as such: "After a decade of decline, South Africa has turned the corner. Our economic trajectory is once again positive and improving. The structural reforms, which have not received the attention and recognition they deserve, are fundamentally transforming our economy and have unleashed an unprecedented wave of investment into the network industries. If sustained, they will be the impetus to start spinning our economic flywheel, unleashing a virtuous cycle of confidence and investment and accelerating economic activity that will drive prosperity for decades to come." Carol, this is not President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking, but Adi Enthoven, the chairman of Yellowwood's investment group that obviously owns Hollard, Nando's and a string of other businesses, in a lecture at the University of Stellenbosch in November 2025. And I thought maybe you can give us your view as well at the time, that this may be one of those seminal speeches, of turning the corner, turning the finally to Maminaing after what is it, 8 years since 2018. Do you think President Ramaphosa may latch onto something like this, a moment like this, and make it a good news SONA?
Very much so. I think that will be the framing of the SONA, that we're in a new economic space, that we can turning the corner, that we've left some of our problems behind, that things are going to change. So I think that would most definitely be the overall framing. And I think there is a positivity, and there is a positivity in the business community. I don't think that positivity has reached the ground because I think people are not feeling it. But there certainly is a positivity in the business community that the economy's now got potential to grow, at least to begin growing.
Carol, if just briefly, and we'll get into it a bit later, but what are these network industries that Enthoven specifically talks about?
Right. So what he's referring to there is the electricity and the freight logistics, so the rail, which has been a monopoly up until now, and the electricity as well, which was also a monopoly, state monopolies. And what Cyril Ramaphosa has done, and I think it will be his legacy, it will certainly be his kind of standout legacy, is that he has opened the way to private investment in public infrastructure. And that has been resisted in South Africa for a very long time for political reasons. But he has smoothed the way, he's done it. And I think that it will become irreversible. So you're going to see, instead of just Transnet on the railway lines, transporting iron ore, coal, etc., you're going to see private trains. You're going to start to see, eventually you'll see private concessions. You're going to see private companies running the big ports, terminals. You're going to see more and more, eventually a competitive electricity market where Eskom isn't the only producer, and Eskom has to compete with other generators. So it is certainly, these are certainly very significant and big and complex reforms that Cyril Ramaphosa has managed to pull off, although slowly.
I heard you saying a lot, going to see. Do you think the president can tell us tonight when? When will we see private ports? When will we see private rail? Is it next year this time?
Well, the private rail is going to start pretty soon. The private operators are going to start pretty soon. There's already a Durban Port Terminal, which is going to be operated by a Filipino company. So, yes, it's already happening. And we have already got independent power producers who are generating electricity. So the competition is starting, and the private investment is beginning. I think the difficulty is that some of these things take a long time to fix. So Transnet, for instance, to fix that, the actual rail, the railway line, requires huge investments that the state doesn't have, and that process is going to be a bit long, a bit far away. But yeah, these are very important reforms.
Bongekile, I want to come to you. I think South Africans will be listening to the speech tonight, and many of them, including residents in Johannesburg, places like Kimberley, Knysna, will be listening for that W word, water, because that is their biggest crisis tonight. They don't care about private rail tonight. They care about water in their taps. The president cannot only come with a good news, Sona, right?
Absolutely, Adrian. In fact, this state of the nation has been overshadowed by that, has been overshadowed by the fact that, people don't have water, and you can't go in front of the nation and speak about, and while it is important what Carol speaks about and some of these structural reforms that he's made, but at the heart of it is that people want to know that we are going to get water coming out of our taps. We get everything that you've done, but fundamentally, if I have a small child, a newborn, I need water. Water is life. I don't think there's any other way of saying it. So I think President Ramaphosa has an opportunity tonight to be a state president, to be a statesman, and be frank and be direct on how this water crisis is going to be solved. But I also want to add, Adrian, to say that while we are seeing this water challenges and that it's now becoming such a huge issue, also speaks to also how unequal of a society we are in South Africa, and that there are millions of South Africans in rural provinces such as the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, who have lived without water for 31 years. I'll make an example about my village where I come from. If you do not have money to buy a water tank in your house, a JoJo tank, you have to fetch water from the river. That is our reality, right? And I was speaking to a friend this morning to say when my uncle died in 2018, there was actually a drought, and I had to go to the stream to fetch water, and it took me more than an hour to fill a 20-liter bucket. So the water challenges can't now be
salute is traditionally rendered in honor of the head of state, and of course the national anthem
issue that is important because
now,
it's happening
these
in the
elements
residence
affirm
of
the president's
Johannesburg
role as the
or
head
in
of state
Knysna or
and
whatever.
commander-in-chief,
It has been a
and
crisis,
signal the
but it
gravity
shows that
of the occasion.
when, if you have an address in Parktown, if you have an address in Bryanston, it doesn't solve, it doesn't absolve you from an inept state. It doesn't absolve you when politicians are squandering the resources that should fix the infrastructure, the water infrastructure. And in fact, interestingly, these water challenges or the challenges in Gauteng around water have long existed, but instead of politicians using the resources to fix the reservoirs, to fix the infrastructure, what have they done? They've squandered it, and now we are seeing people coming out frustrated. So definitely, Adrian, everyone is looking to Ramaphosa to speak about water.
And then the other big crisis that's been in the headlines over the past few days and weeks is foot and mouth disease. That is ravaging our agricultural sector we reported yesterday, our lead story on News 24 yesterday was that in KwaZulu-Natal, between 70 and 90% of all herds are now infected. And that's specifically smaller. You're talking about rural people again, smaller and medium-sized farmers will be the hardest hit. Do you expect him to talk about that?
That it would be amiss of him not to talk about that, Adrian, because again, food is life. People eat meat, people want milk, and this is at the heart of the livelihood of farmers. It's not only small farmers, commercial farmers, so the agriculture sector, which is also very critical in our economy, is at stake right now. And it would be amiss of him not to also announce what is it that the government is doing outside of what we've heard the Minister of Agriculture saying, but what is he saying as the head of state around this issue? Interestingly, this morning I had an interview with Action SA leader in Parliament, Athol Trollip, who's also a farmer, by the way. Yes, and they've been pushing strongly around this issue. And he was like, he was saying that Ramaphosa actually needs to call this, a national state of disaster. And he was saying that, look, even with these vaccines, he was in the Eastern Cape with farmers who are still waiting for these vaccines. So it will be a miss for the president not to speak about those two important issues, water and food and markets.
Carol, so we've heard from you that we might hear some good news tonight, some positive feedback on macroeconomic stuff, on government, private sector initiatives that's finally paying off. We also heard from Bongekile that there's serious issues today, table kind of literally issues of life and death. What are the pillars of the speech that you think he should be talking about tonight? I mean, which issues would you like to hear him talking about?
Well, I think we do need to hear there's a little bit of clarity. There's a big debate going on. I mean, I don't think most citizens will be watching it, but I think the business sector will certainly be watching out for clarity on Eskom and the Eskom unbundling process. That's certainly going to be the case. I would like to see, so I'd like to see that, but I would really like to see something about crime and what he's going to do about the police, because I do think that has become the biggest constraint to investment and the biggest factor that is impinging on people's lives. So I would like to see, it would be very disappointing if he says he's going to wait for the end of the Madlanga Commission and then he's going to act.
Which sounds very Ramaphosa-ish to say that.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got a crisis now, so we do need, we need solutions now. We can't wait. So I think that would, that's another very important issue for me. And then I think that from his point of view, what I expect him to say is, he has to restore confidence that he can govern, that this government can govern, because at the moment, with all of these crises and these fires breaking out all over the place, I think that people are seriously questioning his ability to govern.
And that leads me into my next point, Bongekile, that I want to discuss will bring you in on, and that is that we're in an election year. And we must be realistic. So Ramaphosa is still a politician. He's also the president of the ANC that's going to contest a very tough municipal election later this year, specifically in metros like Johannesburg. Do you expect to hear any political point scoring from the president tonight for the ANC specifically, or will it be more a GNU approach to say, look, all of us together can make this work?
I think even if you were to try, Adrian, and score points for the ANC, I think the ANC is gone past the stage of scoring points at this point. I don't think there's anything that Cyril Ramaphosa or anyone else can say to an ordinary South African at that matter that will convince them that the ANC is for the people of South Africa. I think as we are having this conversation now, I can ask you, what is it that the ANC has done since 2024 until now that has said to you and I and Carol that they really have renewed, or they've learned their lessons and they actually want to do better? So I think it would best suit him to focus on what the GNU has done and how as a collective they have won, or how as a collective they have fallen short, and leave the politics out of it, because honestly there is absolutely nothing the ANC has done that has that has said to ordinary South Africans they are ready, they really want to turn the corner, or they are still interested. In fact, I also make the point that I think the ANC has given up on governance. It has given up on running South Africa, or even running where it still has power. I wrote recently for News 24 after the January 8 statement, where I was in the Northwest, that they have given up on governance. So there's nothing that he can say. If I were his advisor, I would be like, stick to what we have done as the government and leave the politics out of it, because there's no brownie points that the ANC can say we are claiming this as our victory.
Carol, do you want to weigh in on this point?
I agree. I think that this isn't the time. I think that the strength that he can project at the moment is the GNU, the success of the GNU, the fact that, you know, you had two parties, particularly the ANC and the DA, which had the vision to say, let's put our differences aside and let's work for the nation. And I think that's the strongest selling point that he's got, and that's the strongest that he as an individual has as well. I mean, I think that's his appeal. So I agree with you. I mean, there's going to be no point scoring for the ANC at this stage.
We heard some interesting comments on the red carpet from some ANC ministers about crises, etc. Gwedi Mantashe, I heard, said that we don't create policy for crisis when asked about the water crisis in Johannesburg. That might be the second worst thing he said recently, after that, blaming the youth people for not working, young people not fighting hard enough for jobs. Okay, let's get deeper into some of the big issues of the night. So water. Last year, I went back to the State of the Nation address from last year. The president promised us the establishment of a national water resource infrastructure agency. Now, Bongekile, I've looked at that, hasn't happened. The government, it has been gazetted, and the aim is to establish this entity by April this year. It hasn't happened. I mean, what does the president do? Does he come there tonight and apologize that it hasn't happened, or does he explain that it's going to happen? Because we've seen a number of these promises in past sonas that just doesn't happen in the here.
And I think also the problem with the president, Adrian, is that he sometimes comes and acts as if he is getting into the role for the first time. So he won't take you back and say, "Oh, I promised the trains." What was those bullet trains? And we haven't been able to do that because of X, Y, and Z, right? He just comes and makes promises on top of promises. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes tonight on top of what he announced. This thing that he announced, he comes and announces another thing, or he says, I have established another task team, or I have. And I think that's what sometimes frustrates South Africans about our president, is that he's got these grand, big ideas that when you look at them, they don't solve the problems of the people. And I think, and I will go back to my earlier point, where I honestly think people want a Ramaphosa who's going to come and say, okay, Pemima Jordina is not in the house today because I've said she needs to go and solve the problems of water. And this is what's going to happen. This is the timeline. And you can hold me accountable, or you can hold any of my executive accountable if this doesn't happen by this time. People are growing increasingly frustrated, Adria.
You know, the problem is, if I can just come in here, the problem is that there is no quick fix for the water crisis. So it's not as if, you know, I think they could maybe say in Joburg, well, by Sunday, we're hoping that the reservoirs have pumped the water, whatever. But this crisis is going to happen again. This is now going to be the typical thing, and I think it's going to go on for a couple of years. So the problem with these fixes to infrastructure and to the Water Resources Investment Agency and all of that, they take long. They take a long time. So it's going to be a long time before the water crisis is fixed. So if he stands up and says, "Be patient, it's coming, it's going to be fixed soon," that would be a lie, actually. And he's going to be, you know, called to account for that come the election. Well, look, we've still got the exact same problems. So there's no quick fix for water, unfortunately.
I do, however, want to ask you, Carol, and I'll come back to that now before after I've asked Bongekile about the Premier of Gauteng's comments last night about water. But you know, we've seen this president appointing boards or starting agencies or commissions to fix problems. Is that the solve for water? Is the new agency going to solve the water problem, or is there other stuff? You can think about that for a moment. Bongekile, let's talk about the tone deafness of the ANC, and specifically Panyaza Lesufi. I mean, that will go down as probably one of the worst faux pas in South African political history. Just remind us what he said last night and in which context it happened.
It infuriates me to no end, Adrian Passon, that Panyaza Lesufi, in him trying to make himself as if he is in touch with ordinary South Africans, says, well, we are also not immune to these challenges. I mean, for example, myself, when I don't have water at my house, I go and bath at a certain hotel. Can you for a second think about what that means to someone in Gauteng who stays in Motsoaledi informal settlement, where they do not even have money to buy a 2 liter of amas, and you as the leader of that province, that they are looking to for solutions or to at least say, we are working, you come and tell them that you go to a hotel. I don't even think it's tone deaf. There needs to be another word to invent. It's insane how politicians are so out of touch with how ordinary South Africans live, with the poverty. You are leading people from deep slot. Some of them, their children go to bed hungry, and the least that they want is water, to at least maybe boil water and drink tea and go to bed because there's nothing to cook. And you come and say, I go and bath at your hotel, and then you still have the audacity to send out a statement a few minutes before 12 p.m. and say, I was taken out of context, or this is not what I meant. Those were your words. You can say you were taken out of context if you had written something
Everyone
down, because you can interpret it differently. Those were your words. And by the way, I need to add, this comes after a week after another Sunday publication released a video of the MEC of Health in Gauteng saying that patients enjoy sleeping on the floor in hospitals, and further saying, I don't want journalists with cameras in my hospitals, speaks to exactly how tone deaf politicians are. Politicians, by the way, whose lifestyle are funded by taxpayers. It's insane what Panyaza Lesufi said. And I can tell you now, the ANC can kiss Joburg and Gauteng goodbye, because I promise you, voters are going to be brutal to the ANC. And Panyaza also likes holding himself as if he's the voice of reasons. I am in touch, I know. And if I said this on X this morning, that if these people can say this, Carol, in public, can you imagine what they say in private when we are not there, when they boast about their lifestyles? It's like now we were discussing before we came here, another politician speaking about how his suit is from Italy. The inequality in this country, the unemployment and everything that is facing this country, we have politicians telling us to our face that I am better than you. I am privileged. It's insane. It hurts me.
Absolutely. Carol, the president has now delegated the Minister of Water Affairs and Sanitation, Pemi Majodina, as well as the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Vele Nkosi Hlabisa, to Johannesburg. And he will probably say that tonight. Well, I take this so seriously, I sent his ministers there. Is that enough? Does that help? Is it what would the residents of Joburg want him to say tonight?
Well, they would want to be told that the water is going to flow out of the taps right now, and that he cannot tell them. So that's the problem. As I said, there's no quick fix. I think that is another. The solutions to the water crisis, the fact that you need investment, and the fact that you need your municipalities not to spend the revenue they collect for water on other things, the fact that you need some kind of private investment into infrastructure, which is what that National Water Resource Agency is all about. That's what it's facilitating. Those are long-term fixes that are important, but they are medium-term. Those fixes are going to take a couple of years. So that's the problem. He can't actually tell them what they really want to hear.
And the point we just spoke about earlier, I mean, is another agency the answer to this? I mean, do we have to be patient?
So the purpose of this particular agency is to do the same as they're doing in electricity and in freight rail. To say, let's make, because the state now doesn't have any money to invest, make the huge investments that are required in water infrastructure, let's set up this agency which will allow private participation into this, into building water infrastructure. So that's why that's happening, and that is also why it's a problem that it's delayed. I think they say now it'll be the board hasn't been appointed yet. They say it'll be operating by 1st of April. Well, we hope so, and we hope that that board is a board of professionals and people who can get the job done. So yeah, as I said, I mean, problem is years. Years.
Carol, I remember about a month ago you went to listen to Dr. Sean Phillips, the DG of Water Affairs Department, probably one of our best DGs, most experienced DGs, and you came back to the office and your eyes were this big because you heard some scary stuff. Is this what you're talking about?
I think that the problem is that Joburg, well, apart from the fact that they're losing in some municipalities 70% of the water to leaks, and those municipalities do not have the funds to fix the infrastructure. So this is treated water. This is water that's been treated at great expense. Not only that, this is water in the case of Gauteng. It's not only been treated at great expense, it's been pumped all the way from Lesotho. So this is expensive water, and you're letting it flow, escape into the ground. So those are the problems, and the leaks have to be fixed. Investment has to be made, and then even after that, as Gauteng is going to need more sources of water. So even once the Lesotho Highlands Project 2 comes online, they're going to need more water. So people have to change their behavior, and that's another thing they don't want to hear at this point. They're not in the mood for hearing that. And how do you do it? Because with load shedding, you just switch off the system. With water, it's a little bit more difficult.
Although Helen Zille, well, some would say incoming mayor of Joburg, denied this week, that disputed this argument that people are using too much water in Joburg and said it's all about leaks. But let's see how that plays out. Bongekile, I want to come back to the foot and mouth disease. The foot and mouth disease has become very political, specifically for the DA. You had the DA's outgoing leader, John Steenhuisen, who's also the Minister of Agriculture, saying actually during his speech last week, I almost said resignation speech, he didn't resign, he just said he's not going to be up for re-election. But saying that he wants to focus on this now, this is now his mission. He's under huge scrutiny, he's under huge criticism by the farming sector. I mean, this must be a scary moment for the DA because this is a core part of the constituency.
And interestingly, I was speaking to colleagues this week about how the DA, with everything, they are ready to criticize, they are ready to say, oh, this one is not doing this one is not doing this. If you are following their, and they put out statements, if you are following them, on the foot and mouth diseases, actually, they haven't said a lot. I think the statement that I've seen of them was when the minister had announced the vaccination, and they were speaking about, oh, this is the first time in 21 years. But they have been silent because, again, you are now in government, and these things happen in government. Like Carol was saying, some of these things don't happen as fast as you would like them to do. And the DA is now realizing, because its minister has a huge crisis on his hands, and is finding out that I can't just fix this like this. So the DA their communication has been it has been dodge for them. And also, like you say, farmers are a huge constituency for the DA, and like you already said, it's an election year. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the minister is going to maneuver this one, but also how the party is going to get itself out of this one. And of course, already, like I've said, parties like Action SA are already using it also as like, the minister is not doing what he's supposed to do. But also what has been interesting is that how some other parties have been quiet around this issue. I'm not sure whether they don't understand it, or because they know that many of their constituencies are not farmers. There hasn't been a lot of statements coming out or politicians coming out to say this needs to be done. But definitely the DA has a lot on its hands.
Carol, this does not bode well for the government of national unity. I mean, when the GNU was formed in when was it, June 2024, we said that for the GNU to work, they have to change the lives of South Africans somehow. They have to show South Africans that they govern better than a monolithic ANC majority party. But I mean, things like water and foot and mouth disease does not help, right?
It doesn't help. And the difficulty is, I mean, to move the needle is hard, right? So it's because the backlogs are quite huge. So John Steenhuisen coming into agriculture, which has been badly managed, it has been badly managed, only recently revived. These are difficult things to fix. You suddenly find out after 20 years of cadre deployment that you don't have the people in your department to do the work. They're not capable of doing it. But yeah, big reality check for the DA. Yeah. Suddenly very different. You have to take responsibility for governing.
Steenhuisen has not had the best few months. First the sacking of Dion George and the vicious reaction to that, and now the outbreak. I mean, Carol, does this? We're seeing new leadership coming into the DA. The name of Jordan Hill-Lewis, the mayor of Cape Town, is often mentioned as the natural incoming leader of the DA. Does this give the DA, and the DA is going to conference in April, I think the 11th and 12th of April, they're going to a national elective conference. Does all of this that we've just spoken about, does it give them a moment to reflect and pause and maybe reconsider their position in the GNU?
Look, I do think they're going to have to do that. I think that come their Congress, that is going to be a big issue for discussion. Why are we in the GNU and what are we doing in the GNU? I think that ultimately the decision will probably be consensus. We're staying in the GNU. I don't see them deciding to leave, but there is going to be, I think, a lot of opposition voice to the way they've conducted themselves in the GNU, and I think that the DA membership and the DA kind of activist base feel that the DA hasn't been assertive enough, that they've allowed the ANC to continue governing, which in fact has happened. I mean, to a large extent, the ANC hasn't had to give up much power for this GNU. So I think that that's going to be a debate, and that is where the tension in the GNU, and we know it almost broke over the budget last year. So it's those tensions are going to be, I think, revved up again when the DA have their Congress.
Interesting topic to watch, and I'm sure you and the politics team will be all over that Congress. Let's move to the police. We spoke about the police early on. I don't know about you guys, but it feels to me like the Madlanga Commission is becoming a bit like a Days of Our Lives soap opera. I mean, from Imogen Mshazi to Julius Mkwanazi to Brown Mokhutse. I mean, it's all these characters, and it's ugly. It is incredibly ugly and scary. You know, Bonkekile, you spoke a lot already about those South Africans who are completely dependent on government to work, who has no other ways to protect themselves. They need the police to work. It must be so scary for them to watch this. What do we expect of the president tonight? Is he going to talk about this?
I think the president and Minister Nchabeni this morning, when we were at the precinct, has already hinted, and the president has said that they are not going to run running commentary while the the commission is still ongoing, and Ramaphosa has said that he will not be commenting. And I think, again, it goes back to what people want and what he can't promise people what they want. Because people have been pushing to say, sure, you've already made recommendations of people that need to be disciplined, but what about the big fish? And the big fish is Senzo Mchunu, who is your political ally. And he said, I think a few weeks ago, and we had published that story, that people are impatient when it comes to Senzo Mchunu, and you will deal with that. And again, it's just those things that people want. They want you to see, they want you to come out and say, this is the action I'm taking against Senzo Mchunu. Because Senzo Mchunu, by the way, is still earning a ministerial salary. He's still been driven around. He still has protectors. And all of these things are coming out of the Madlanga Commission, linking, it's not just about him alone, but, he is at the center of all of this. But also, it's been so scary, Adrian, like you said, to hear how, even places like Ekurhuleni have been run, how how so much of criminals are running our state institutions. And I know that there's a lot that people can say about Mkhwanazi and that July 6 a press briefing, but I sometimes think, if that man had not said all of that, what he said, would we know about this thing? I know News 24 has covered extensively Ket Matlala, but just how ingrained this man was running the country, it's incredibly crazy. And I really do hope that the president does speak really strongly on policing. Here in the Western Cape, how people are killed every day, it shocks me all the time how we would report that 7 people have been killed at one go. So I think there really needs to be serious decisions, and the president really needs to turn things around when it comes to crime, because also we are raising children. What kind of a society where you can't raise a child that can go to a park opposite your house because you are scared that they might be raped or killed?
Carol, Peyton, the typical Ramaphosa thing to do tonight would say, well, the Madlanga Commission is still sitting. I can't prejudge it. I did issue a statement 2 weeks ago in response to the interim report where certain police officers were recommended for suspension, but I'm not going to touch Mkhunu and Fani Masemola and the big fish for now. Would that be the right approach tonight?
Look, I do think there's a case to be made to allow the commission to do its work. So I do think that has to happen, because otherwise you do run the risk of it not being a fair process. So I think that yes, people are impatient. It will be, but again, I don't think that's something he can deliver on right now. But what I really think should be done, because you can't defer. Clearly, there needs to be reform in the police. There's a crisis. We need solutions to urgent things, like the police minister, the acting police minister, Feroz Kachali, is saying that, well, actually, we can't deal with the gangs. We're not equipped to. Are we just going to say, okay, let's wait for better days? So there are various crises all over the country that need to be addressed, and we need answers on that.
Crime intelligence is basically dysfunctional.
Crime intelligence, the forensic services, all of those things. We need solutions. We can't wait until next year's State of the Nation.
What will happen in the next 12 months? And yes, he cannot speak to the final implementation of the report tonight, but you will have a report before our next donor. Will the president be brave enough to make this deep structural change?
That is the big question, and that is the big fear, because he's had a similar inquiry into the intelligence services. One of the very first things he did when he became president was he set up this high-level panel to look at what was happening in the security services, and that panel came back and said, this is riddled with corruption. This is riddled with factionalism. You need to take this thing apart. And very few of those recommendations were taken up by Ramaphosa. In fact, he seemed to have a very hands-off approach on the security sector. It's not his area.
No.
He doesn't have the confidence to do things. And I think that's a huge weakness in his presidency. And I think it's a big risk that we clearly need a very thoroughgoing reform of the SAPS and other institutions, and we might not get that.
By the way, the investigation you referred to was under Sidney Mufamadi, the high-level panel, and one of his key recommendations was that the SSA, as it was known, be split back into two agencies, a domestic intelligence agency and a foreign intelligence agency. That was about 6-7 years ago when the president announced that SONA, this will be done. I understand from our colleagues in our investigations team that still hasn't happened. The bill has been passed, but it hasn't happened. That those teams still work together at the SSA on the so-called form. I'm not sure what they do every day.
It's we don't have I don't think there's a director general of the SSA at this point. That's been vacant for a long time. No one really seems to know.
There's no more minister. There's no more full-time minister.
The minister, yeah. So it's clearly not being taken seriously.
And it's scary that it's not being taken seriously.
It's scary because during this period, if you look at what happened, sort of through the state capture years and then beyond, well into Ramaphosa's presidency, organized crime really took hold of our institutions.
I want to move, Carol, to foreign relationships and foreign affairs, and specifically our relationship with the United States. So about a week or so ago, we saw that the United States Congress did approve AGOA again, the bill that gives African countries preferential treatment, and South Africa was not kicked out as expected. Well, firstly, were you surprised that we weren't kicked out? And secondly, what does it really mean?
Well, I think that what had to happen was kicking us out was, I think, a separate process to them just renewing the bill. I think what was very worrying about their extension was that the Congress had said to Senate, renew it for 3 years, and Senate came back and said no, 1 year. Because clearly President Trump wants to restructure his relationship with Africa, and he wants to do it in a much more transactional way. So we weren't really kicked out then, but I don't, we don't have much to gain at this point because there are still other tariffs in place, like auto tariffs are still going to stand, steel tariffs are still going to stand. So we don't get a hell of a lot out of the extension at this point.
Carol, do you think that foreign policy will feature tonight in the speech? I mean, will the president?
I think he should, because this is his presidential moment, and he is the head of state, and he should be saying something about how we position ourselves. I fear, though, it's going to be a very romantic notion, about South Africa being non-aligned, but in a very realistic way, when what we actually really need is a pragmatic and objective look at how we're going to survive in this. It's a new world. The world has changed fundamentally. So how do we see ourselves? I mean, there's the famous Mark Carney speech who said, the middle nations, and we would fit into that category. But we're so confused about who we are. So sometimes we fit into that category, and sometimes we say no. We have solidarity with Iran, Russia, and China. So we're very confused about who we are. But unfortunately, I don't expect to get any clarity. And I think that is another really big weakness of the Ramaphosa presidency, because we need to clarify who we are. We need to decide what is in the national interest and how should we operate. What is our economic diplomacy strategy? We can't just be we global south, and so therefore, if we want to have tea with Iran, we will.
We will. We still don't have an ambassador in Washington. We've had Alistair Reuters, the president's investment envoy or investment advisor, leading trade negotiations for South Africa in Washington, in the United States. He's the hot favorite, it seems, to take over from as ambassador. And we've got a new U.S. ambassador coming here, Leo Bozell, who's supposed to arrive in the next few days, apparently. I mean, is this something? How do you read this? I mean,
sure. The relationship between South Africa and the US has really been so difficult in the past year or so. That I mean, I think at some point the country or president hasn't been able to know how to navigate, especially with the ambassador, because I think with Rasul it's been over since he was kicked out of so I think it's been such a difficult, because there's hostility, so you don't know how to engage these people, you know, you don't know where to start. So I think it's been such a difficult relationship to maneuver, and hopefully maybe when that ambassador comes, maybe things will be easier and the lines of communication will be open, you know, and we can finally have, but I don't see us getting to a point where the relationship, you know, is healthy and is mature. You know, I mean, even with the G20, they've decided that they don't want to be part of it. So it's a very difficult, and I think I don't usually sympathize with government or Ramaphosa, but I think I am sympathetic, because you are dealing with a state president in the US who's simply a child.
Erratic. Bongekile, you were at the G20. That was a big moment, and we will definitely hear about that tonight. We will definitely hear the president singing our praises about hosting the G19.
Of course, definitely. I think that is probably one of the highlights of, you know, last year and the G20, that we successfully, the world was looking to us, and also I think the other world leaders are leaving and then having these glowing reviews about how South Africa, definitely we are going to get a line from that to show that we are a capable state and we can do things right.
It is now less than 15 minutes before we hear the State of the Nation 2026. I'm still joined by my colleagues Bongekile Makupe and Carol Payton. Parliamentarians arriving, the president soon to arrive, judicial officials will make their way into the Cape Town City Hall. Sona's still sitting at the Cape Town City Hall, of course, after Parliament burned down. How many years ago it is now? And I'm told that construction is underway in Parliament, but it's unclear how quick that will happen. You can also now see the South African National Defence Force soldiers lined up outside Cape Town City Hall. We see some army helicopters, and we will soon hear those fighter jets, some of the remnants of the arms deal that's still flying. We will hear them over the Cape Town skies. And the president is expected to arrive soon with the First Lady, of course, the Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya. Bongekile, I do want to continue on the topic of foreign affairs and talk about Iran. Carol spoke about Iran, and, you know, we have to be more pragmatic about our friendships. There was an interesting moment recently with the war games, or the so-called, you know, I always find that term so rather unfortunate, because war isn't funny, of course, or a game. But okay, the war games, or the exercises, and we had this weird situation where Iran diplomatically is our ally. I mean, we South Africa doesn't have an issue with Iran. We visit there, you know, we have visits to the Tulias, etc. But then, because of where we find ourselves in the world, you had the president instructing the Minister of Defense, or at least in the head of the Navy, not for Iran to participate, but then they do participate. Do you think we'll hear about that tonight?
I think I'll go back to what Carol was saying when she was speaking about that, to say that one of the weaknesses of Ramaphosa, he kind of like shies away from, you know, controversies, if you were, and I think I don't anticipate that he will say anything about that. And I think for him, the fact that he probably has spoken to NG, and NG has established this board to investigate what has happened, is where he's going to leave it. And he likes staying away from the controversy. So I don't anticipate, but I mean, we've seen that the army generals have gone rogue. And it's interesting, because when you speak to Bantu Olomisa, you would think that, you know, he's got things under control. But I think it goes back to what Carol was saying earlier about the DA and coming into the system and seeing that, you know, so the army generals have been able to do things the way that they like for so long. And also we can't run away from also the patriarchy of it all, that now this woman is coming and is leading us, and we will show her, and we know the system better. And obviously it doesn't look good for our country, but I don't expect that the president is going to say anything about that. He's going to leave it at departmental level.
Carol, ESCOM is a favorite hobby also of yours. You've been following it for many years. And we've recently had this strange thing that happened. Maybe you can just tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about this, because we should hear about it tonight. President Ramaphosa in 2019, so that is 7 years ago, in his State of the Nation, announced the unbundling of ESCOM. He announced that ESCOM will be split into 3 parts: transmission, generation, and distribution. Thank you. What we did see over the past year was the establishment of the transmission company. But now something happened in December around Minister Ramaphosa, where he's now wants to divert from the original plan. What is this issue about?
So I think it's a bit of a specialist thing. I mean, I think I don't think the ordinary public are going to be watching out for exactly the specific language that's used, but certainly.
But why is it important?
But certainly the business community are going to be watching out. It does use the specific language they're looking for, which is the full unbundling. So the issue is the split is in process. Who keeps the assets? If ESCOM is split up, does each part move away from ESCOM with assets, of that, let's say the transmission lines, the power lines, do those go with transmission? And ESCOM has said, no, they don't. We keep the assets. Now, from their point of view as a company, a sustainable company, that's better for them because they've got a better balance sheet there. So that they want to keep their assets, and to really fully unbundle that, to set up a company, a transmission company, or whatever it is, a transmission system operator, which doesn't have assets, is a recipe for failure. So there's argument against this is this version, this ESCOM's version, which Minister Ramaphosa agrees with. Yes, he likes that. He likes that plan. So we're hoping, and I think a lot of organized business is hoping, to hear Ramaphosa put ESCOM in their place, put Ramaphosa in his place, and just say that there will be full unbundling and the assets will move with the transmission system.
Carol, the president has just arrived at the City Hall, almost say Parliament again. No, not Parliament, the City Hall, where the State of the Nation address will take place. He's greeted by Toko Didiza, the Speaker of Parliament, a former agriculture minister who John Steenhuisen's predecessor. There may not be a lot of love lost there because she was the minister when this department had to produce more vaccines. But yes, the president looking in a jovial mood, cracking some jokes with heads of the security agencies, with Toko Didiza, the speaker. We also see Fani Mosamola, the chief of police, arriving at Parliament. It's now less than 10 minutes before we start. Bongekile, we've spoken about ESCOM and that, again, it's one of those promises. You spoke earlier about the broken promises. There's another one 7 years after the president announced something. It still hasn't happened. And there's, again, efforts to undermine his decision. Another one may be the NHI, where we recently heard the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, saying, can the parties please come together, the fighting parties, the medical aids, the private doctors associations, and on the other side government, and please try and reach a settlement. There we can hear the fighter jets now flying in the Cape Town skies, breaking the sound barrier. Do you expect to hear the president on NHI tonight?
I think NHI is such a stale topic right now, and I think the Minister of Finance was correct to say, I think it's out of government. The president might as well have said, I've signed on the NHI. It's now, up to whoever the court cases and everything else. So I think he's probably moved on from the NHI. We're not going to hear anything from the NHI. The people who are fighting need to sort themselves out.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think Ramaphosa has really nailed his colours to the mast on NHI. He loves the NHI. So he might just say something to the effect of, we will implement the NHI. which I think will be a bad thing to say because that is not nuanced enough for what we need. We do need to start introducing some nuance into the debate about NHI. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck here for the next decade in court.
I think it's becoming clear that we will have some sort of NHI, but it may not be the NHI as originally envisioned by then Minister Joe Parkler.
And I think that's progress because it means that everyone has taken on board the principle of universal access to healthcare, which is that you shouldn't be denied healthcare just because you can't pay for it. And I think that principle being taken on board by society and all the stakeholders is a huge advance and a really good thing.
But unfortunately, as Bongekile told us, there's still politicians who believe that patients want to sleep on the floors. So that is the problem. Thank you very much, as always, Carol Payton, for our pre-SANA analysis. This year joined by Bongekile Makupe in our Cape Town studios. Please stay tuned to News 24 as we hear the 21 gun salute now being shot outside of the City Hall. And then President Ramaphosa will make his way into the City Hall to deliver the 2026 State of the Nation address. We will be watching, we will be listening closely, carefully. We'll bring you the breaking angles from the State of the Nation speech on News 24, and afterwards, we'll tell you what it all means and whether we were right or wrong in our predictions. Thank you for listening. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. Let me go back inside. I'm probably still hooked up and stuff. I know. I'm tired of talking.
Of National Council of Provinces as well as the Secretary to Parliament into the chamber. And of course, you would have seen there the President acknowledging the salute of the third guard with a nod as the procession passes at the VIP entrance of the City Hall and proceeds together with the Speaker of the National Assembly, as I've just outlined, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, and they were led by the two aides-de-camp to the passageway to join the Sergeant at Arms. The usher of the
Order, honorable members. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer and meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, we will try next time to add just 1 minute so that we can finish the prayers and meditation. Would like to thank our praise singer, and very importantly, that this year is the 30 years of our constitution, and she gave the poem in Kuntail language, which recognizes the importance of the Khoi and the San members of our society. Honorable members, the leaders of our political parties who are here present with us in the gallery, our former heads of state, our former presiding officers who are here, our First Lady, the judiciary, the premiers of our provinces, the speakers, and all honored guests that have been invited by Parliament to grace this important occasion where we would be listening to the State of the Nation address. Would like also to acknowledge our members at home who are watching these proceedings online. Honorable members, the President has called this joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces in terms of Section 84, subsection 2D of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, read with Joint Rule 13, subsection 1, subsection A, to deliver his State of the Nation address to Parliament. I now call on the Honorable the President, His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, to address the joint sitting. Honorable President. Honorable members, may we be seated to allow the President to address the nation. Honorable President.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Togo Didiza, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Refile Mtsweni-Tsipane, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, former Chairperson of the NCOP, Mr. Amos Masondo, former Chairperson of the NCOP, Dr. Naledi Pandor, Mayor of Cape Town, Alderman Jordan Hill-Lewis, he was nervous. He thought I wouldn't be able to pronounce his first name because it's wrongly spelled. Deputy Chief Justice Dunstan Mlambo, Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders, Khosi Thabo Siatlulo, Isitwalandwe, Mayor Sophie de Bruyn, President of Contralesa, President of Contralesa, Khoshi Mutupa Mukwena, members of Parliament, premiers of our provinces, fellow South Africans. 70 years ago, thousands of women of all races marched to the Union buildings, their hearts beating with a common purpose. Armed with extraordinary cunning and resolve, these women braved police checkpoints and harassment. In a voice loud and clear, they said, "We shall not rest until we have won for our children their fundamental rights of freedom, justice, and security." We recall the powerful image of Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Sophie de Bruyn, lay at the doorstep of a prime minister who did not dare to meet them. Every petition they handed over carried the weight of justice. Each of the 100,000 signatures they had collected expressed a desire for freedom and equality. For 30 minutes, the 20,000 women stood on the steps of the amphitheater of the Union buildings in silence, not singing, not moving, not speaking. The powerful imagery of these women standing in silence illustrated their resolve and their commitment to bring change about. Their silence reflected the deep emotional pain and frustration born out of systemic apartheid oppression. Their silence showcased the sorrow and the anger that these women felt in their fight for justice and equality. Their silence was long enough to be unsettling to the apartheid officials who were watching them. In that quiet moment, they showed the world that it is not the shouts of anger, but the stillness of determination that moves mountains. After the silence came the singing of the now eternally famous chant that has gone down in our struggle history, symbolizing the powerful role played by women in the struggle against apartheid. They chanted, "Wathinta Bafazi, Wathinta Mbogodo." Translated, it means you strike a woman, you strike a rock. It is said that the women's chant rolled down the terraces of the Union buildings, turning the seat of state power into a stage of protest, where courage meets authority. This evening, we are honored to have amongst us Mam Sophie de Bruyn, one of the leaders that marched and a stalwart of our struggle for freedom. She and many other women who have made enormous sacrifices in our struggle for freedom remind us that women have always been at the forefront of change, ready to stand up, to be counted, to speak out, and never back down in the fight for justice. To mark this anniversary, I'd like to ask you to rise and give a standing ovation to the women of South Africa who marched on the Union buildings in 1956.
We may be seated.
Ma'am Sophie de Bruyn, I can see where you are seated. Please stand up so that we can see you. It was 50 years ago, in that same spirit of defiance and struggle, that young people in Soweto walked out of school and marched towards Orlando Stadium to oppose the imposition of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction and the hated system of Bantu education. Their courage in the face of a brutally oppressive regime reverberated around the world and brought renewed attention to our struggle. The determination and sacrifices of the youth of 1976 and the generations of young people that would follow continue to inspire us. We thank the young people of 1976. "30 years ago, in 1996, in this very precinct, in the Houses of Parliament, the Constitutional Assembly adopted the text on which our democratic nation is founded. Our Constitution reflects the spirit of those women who marched in 1956, and the young people of 1976, and the many South Africans from all walks of life who fought for our freedom. It is a constitution that reflects the aspirations of the people of South Africa for a nation that is united and at peace, a nation that has thrown off the shackles of oppression and a divided past. It is a constitution that calls on us not only to redress the injustices of the past, but to progressively realize the right of all South Africans to housing, to health, to food, to water, to social security, to education, and to a better and prosperous life for all. Today, we must realize these aspirations in a world that is rapidly changing, a world in which narrow self-interest has replaced the common good, a world in which trade is used as an instrument of cohesion, a world in which might is right and the powerful impose themselves on the weak. To navigate this new world, we must draw on our strength as a nation. Our strength comes from our values, as articulated in our Constitution. The values of dignity, of equality, of non-racialism, non-sexism, diversity, and of the inherent worth of every person. It comes from our people. Our strength comes from our people, from our tolerance, from our generosity, kindness, and solidarity. It comes from our steadfast commitment to upholding the rights and affirming the dignity of people in our society who face prejudice and discrimination, including persons with disabilities and members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Our strength comes from our determination and resolve. It comes from our creativity and inspiration. As we navigate this new world, we must rely on that strength, the strength that comes from our natural endowments, from the minerals in our earth and the richness of our soil, from the beauty of our mountains and shores. Our strength comes from our institutions, which are robust, independent, and from the spirit of democracy and freedom that lives deep within all of us. Our strength and power comes from one another. It comes from what we can achieve when we work together. Our strength also comes from our respect for one another, even as we may differ on various issues. Our strength also comes from our sporting men and women who continue to lift the South African flag on the world stage and bring glory to our nation. Now, as we reflect on the state of our nation, we can say that we are stronger today than we were a year ago. Our economy is growing again, and this growth is gathering pace. While we have experienced 4 consecutive quarters of GDP growth, we know that it has to grow much higher and much faster to meet our social and economic challenges. We have achieved 2 consecutive primary budget surpluses. Our credit rating has improved. Interest rates are coming down, and inflation is at its lowest level in 20 years. We are on a clear path of stabilizing our national debt. The rand has strengthened against the dollar. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the largest stock exchange on the African continent, has performed exceptionally well over the past year. This growth reflects broader economic recovery, investor confidence, and increasing interest in South Africa's economy and equities. Our borrowing costs have been declining. Through Operation Vulindlela, we've made significant progress in accelerating economic reform and opening the way for investment competition. We have brought an end to load shedding and built a more dynamic and resilient energy system. We have made progress in improving the performance of our ports and freight rail lines, steadily increasing the volume of goods that we move in and out of our country. We have restored our passenger rail system. More and more commuters are now able to travel to work on newly locally made trains, significantly reducing their traveling costs. We are investing across our country in roads, in bridges, in rail lines, in ports, in dams, and in solar farms. We have created over 2.5 million opportunities through the presidential employment stimulus, mainly for young people and women. The expanded works program and community work program continue to offer job opportunities to many throughout the country. Last year, we saw the highest matric pass rate in our history, with more than two-thirds. Now, with more than two-thirds of all bachelor passes coming from schools in the most disadvantaged communities. Now, as the economy continues to grow, the rate of unemployment must come down. By expanding our social protection system through the SRD grant, we have reduced the number of people living in food poverty. We are strengthening our anti-corruption laws. Our country has been removed from the gray list of financial action task team. we continue to make the progress that was difficult to make in previous years. The work we have done to rebuild key institutions from state capture is showing results. The South African Revenue Service is once again a world-class tax authority. The investigating directorate continues with its work and is making progress in the prosecution of those who need to be prosecuted. Most importantly, our democratic system is maturing. Our democratic system is maturing and growing stronger. The government of national unity, you will love this, has shown that it is possible for South Africans to come together from across the political spectrum to work on a common agenda for growth and progress. Last year, we hosted the leaders of the world for a successful G20 summit, which showcased our country's strength on the global stage. Confidence is rising amongst investors, business people, and consumers. Now, these improvements are the result of a determined effort across government and across society. They show what is possible when we work in unity and we work with unity of purpose. Now we have a unique window of opportunity to translate these gains into sustained growth. Despite this progress, we must be honest about the challenges that we still face. Although we are moving forward, we must not claim any easy victories. We are still far from where we need to be. For too many people, life remains hard. Jobs are scarce and opportunity is out of reach. South Africans are worried about violent crime and corruption. They are concerned at the state of local government and its inability to deliver basic services in many parts of the country. Above all, they are desperate for work and for an income to support their families. We can only be strong when we are equal, when the progress we have made is shared by all. Now, thank you. Thank you. As I said, I will be deploying the South African National Defence Force to support the police as we did to great effect with illegal mining. I have directed the Minister of Police and the SANDF to develop a technical plan on where our security forces should be deployed within the next few days in the Western Cape and in Gauteng to deal with gang violence and illegal mining. Now, as is required by the Constitution, this year I will inform the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces regarding 20,000 new officers we announced previously in the State of the Nation address. We are also addressing the threat posed by the infiltration of illegal and counterfeit goods to South African jobs and industry. We are establishing a national illicit economy disruption program that brings together key state agencies and other stakeholders, including the private sector. Through the effective use of data analytics, AI, we will be targeting high-risk sectors like tobacco, fuel, alcohol, and other counterfeit products. The hearings of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry and the hearings that are going on in the ad hoc committee here have exposed rampant corruption in the SAPS and some metro police departments through the abuse of power. We cannot tolerate this. The rule of law depends on a police service that is ethical, responsive, and rooted in the communities that it serves. The South African Police Service has established a task team to ensure that investigations arising from the Madlanga Commission are undertaken swiftly without interference. The State Security Agency will re-vet the senior management of the South African Police Service and Metro Police Departments. The vetting process will include lifestyle audits as well. As we have successfully done with previous commissions, we will use the recommendations of the Madlanga Commission to make far-reaching changes. We are determined that the Commission's findings and recommendations will lay the basis for a fundamental reform of our criminal justice system. We are confident that these efforts will succeed because the great majority of police officers are dedicated to upholding the law and diligently serving the people of South Africa. Now, drawing on the success of Operation Vulindlela in advancing economic reform, we will use a similar approach to establish a hard-hitting new criminal justice reform initiative. This will crack down on organized crime, on illicit firearms and trade, using a dedicated team to ensure that reforms are implemented across the system. We are further intensifying the fight against corruption by strengthening bodies such as the Special Investigating Unit, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the Hawks. We will finalize government's approach to the recommendations of the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council on the establishment of a permanent, independent, overarching anti-corruption body. We cannot accept that those who speak out against corruption are victimized, targeted, and killed. The Whistleblower Protection Bill will be introduced in Parliament. Among other things, this will criminalize retaliation and provide psychosocial legal and financial support to whistleblowers. And there will be a special focus on restructuring our procurement system with a view to ending corruption. The Auditor General reports that the majority of incidents of corruption originate in the procurement system. We cannot allow this cancer to continue, and we must therefore act. Measures will be taken. Measures that we will take will include the use of technology and the finalization of the new Public Procurement Act regulations by mid-2026. We cannot fight organized criminals by treading softly. We must act with zero tolerance and bring the full force of the law to bear. And I'd like this message to be clear. There will be no impunity for acts of criminality and corruption. In addition to crime, water is now the single most important issue for many people in our country, from large cities like Johannesburg to smaller towns like Knysna and rural areas like Giyani. We have all seen the pain that our people have been expressing through demonstrations in various parts of Gauteng. Now, these protests have been fueled by the frustrations that our people are feeling over inadequate, unreliable access to basic services such as water. I have directed the Minister of Water and Sanitation and her deputy, as well as the Minister of Cooperative Governance, to attend to the water shortage problem and engage with our communities. Now, I can see you are excited. As we speak,
Order, honorable members. Can we please lessen our voices so that members can hear the message? Thank you.
as we speak, they are in Gauteng at the moment, engaging with our people, explaining to them precisely how government intends to immediately deal with the challenges that our people are experiencing. They have informed me that the pipes that had been damaged are being repaired and the reservoirs are filling up again. Now, this comes from poor planning, inadequate maintenance of water systems by many of our municipalities. And the main cause of the problems are now the reason why we are now having empty taps. There is no silver bullet to address this challenge, which has its roots in systemic failures and many years of neglecting infrastructure. To ensure water security is in the long term, we are building new dams, upgrading existing infrastructure. We have committed 156 billion rand in public funding for water and sanitation infrastructure over the next 3 years. The construction of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project and other large-scale projects like the Ntabelanga Dam, part of the Umzimvubu Water Project in the Eastern Cape, is advancing. And we are in the final stages of establishing a national water resource infrastructure agency to effectively manage the country's water infrastructure and mobilize funding for infrastructure. However, the real challenge lies not in the availability of water, but in getting water to people's taps. The Water Services Amendment Act, or bill, will enable us to hold water service providers accountable for their performance, and if they don't perform, to be able to withdraw their licenses if they do not deliver. If a municipality is not willing or able to provide a service to its residents, then it must be done by another structure that can do so. Now, these reforms will address the root causes of the water crisis. In the short term, we need to address the immediate crisis where water outages are being experienced right now. 3 years ago, when we were experiencing daily power cuts, we established the National Energy Crisis Committee to enable a focused national response. We overcame what seemed like an insurmountable challenge by adopting a clear plan and delivering on it. Using the same approach, we will now elevate our response to water crisis to a National Water Crisis Committee, which I will chair. The structure will bring together all existing efforts into a single coordinating body. The Deputy President has been working with a number of water authorities in the country, and we will coordinate all that to make sure that we address this problem. It will deploy technical experts and resources from national government to municipalities facing water challenges. It will ensure that action is taken swiftly and effectively to address the problem. To address the challenges effectively, we will not hesitate to use the powers that are enshrined in our Constitution and in the Water Services Act to intervene in municipalities where necessary. National government cannot stand by and believe that local government will be able to solve the problem which they are not able to solve. National government will therefore intervene. We will hold to account those who neglect their responsibility to supply water to our people. Government has already laid criminal charges against 56 municipalities that have failed to meet their obligations. We will now move to even lay charges against municipal managers for violating the National Water Act. The critical problem is that in many metros, in many of our cities and towns, water revenue is being used for other purposes, and very little is invested in upgrading and maintaining water infrastructure. To address this challenge, in line with the commitment that we made last year, we have introduced a new 54 billion rand incentive for metros to reform their water and sanitation electricity services. This will ensure that the revenue from water usage is put straight back into fixing pipes, into fixing reservoirs, and into pumping stations. Water outages are a symptom of a local government system that is not working. A far-reaching overhaul is now underway to address the root causes of dysfunction in many of our municipalities. In many places, local government administrations are weak, don't have the capacity, and are also governed by patronage rather than by technical capacity and merit. In her most recent report on local government, the Auditor General said, local government is characterized by inefficient accountability, failing service delivery, poor financial management and governance, weak institutional capability, and widespread instability. She says that arresting the decline of local government will require our collective action. we are now taking collective action. Learning from our experience of the past 30 years, we will, in the coming months, finalize a revised white paper on local government. This will provide solutions for the functioning of an effective local government system. The white paper will reimagine the way that our local government should work. The current system is too complex and fragmented, expecting even small and weak municipalities to take on many responsibilities. We will propose fundamental changes that recognize the reality that some municipalities can take on more functions than others, and that we need a differentiated approach to municipal powers and responsibilities. We're also proposing a more structured cooperation between municipalities and traditional and Khoisan leadership institutions to enable community engagement and shared problem solving. We will ensure that senior officials in local government have the required qualifications and are appointed through an independent process free from political interference. Where municipalities fail, we will strengthen the ability of national government to intervene more quickly and to direct corrective measures in the interest of serving our people better. These changes may be difficult, but they must be done. While these fundamental reforms are underway, we will continue to implement targeted support to improve the delivery of basic services through the presidential working groups on eThekwini and Johannesburg. While we have made progress in stabilizing eThekwini, which has led to investor confidence returning, there is much more that needs to be done in Johannesburg to deal with collapsing infrastructure, financial mismanagement, and electricity and water interruptions. The same applies to a few other metros in our country as well. There are many committed people with skills and experience working in local government. It is our responsibility to remake, reorganize, and better resource municipalities so that they can continue doing their work. As a country, we're increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. And just a few weeks ago, catastrophic flooding in Limpopo and Mpumalanga, as well as parts of KZN, caused the loss of a number of lives and widespread destruction of homes, schools, clinics, and other infrastructure. I visited Guyane, and where there were 16 houses, nicely built houses, as we arrived, it was just an open field. The houses had been washed away. It was like there were no houses ever before. The foundations, the roofs, and all that had been washed away. The classification of floods as a national disaster has enabled national and provincial government to prioritize funding to address the most pressing needs of the people who are affected. A stronger South Africa depends on a growing economy. For more than 15 years, our economy has experienced low growth. All our actions are now driven by the need for rapid and inclusive economic growth to create more jobs and to create, for that matter, better quality jobs. To give effect to the medium-term development plan, Cabinet has approved a comprehensive implementation plan to drive growth and inclusion. Through this plan, we are working to revive growth by creating conditions for firms or companies to invest by maintaining a clear and stable macroeconomic framework, investing in infrastructure that works, creating a conducive regulatory framework that supports growth and enables competition, and a focused and forward-looking industrial policy. The foundations of this plan is investment, particularly in public infrastructure, as well as labor-intensive growth sectors that are capable of future growth. Now, these include the digital and green economy, where young people will find employment opportunities. Infrastructure is much more than an investment in brick, mortar, concrete, and steel. It is an investment in jobs, in productivity, in growth. For many years, fixed investment has been declining. We are now changing all that. Government has committed more than 1 trillion rand in public investment over 3 years to build and maintain infrastructure. This is the largest action of its kind in our country's history, and it will be transformed using innovative funding models, reducing risk and attracting investors to fast-track projects in energy, in water, in transport, and in the digital infrastructure. We launched our first ever infrastructure bond to raise funding for the infrastructure drive that we have embarked upon, which was more than 2 times oversubscribed, showing that when we have put our resolve forward and have put forward innovative ways of raising money, those with money, the private sector, do respond. Disputes arising from implementation of tenders often delay the implementation of necessary infrastructure. We often find that when an infrastructure project is about to be embarked upon, competitors start taking each other to court, and waiting for the long court process always delays the start of those projects. To prevent undue delays in critical projects, we will establish specialized courts for commercial matters with dedicated judges and dedicated court roles to ensure faster outcomes in matters that have a bearing on the economy and development. This will speed up the development of our infrastructure. This year, we will begin the work to establish a professional state property company to transform the 88,000 buildings and 5 million hectares of land owned by the state into professionally managed engines of growth and development. I see you like this one very much. I will repeat it. Now, through Operation Vulindlela, we are working to transform the structure of our economy, to fix our infrastructure, and make our electricity, water, and logistics sectors more competitive and more efficient. Having put load shedding behind us, we must now transform our energy system to ensure long-term energy security. For decades, our economy grew on the back of cheap electricity. But then state capture, mismanagement, inadequate maintenance, and inflated mega projects drove up the cost of electricity to businesses and to ordinary citizens. Now, with the far-reaching changes that we are making to the sector, and with our abundant solar and wind resources, we will be able to drive down the cost of electricity. Regulatory changes have enabled a massive and growing pipeline of investment in renewable energy. By 2030, more than 40% of our energy supply will be coming from cheap, clean, renewable energy sources. We are now establishing a level playing field for competition so that we are never again exposed to the risk of relying on a single supplier to meet our energy needs. We are restructuring ESCOM and establishing a fully independent state-owned transmission entity, as I have said before. This entity will have ownership and control of transmission assets and be responsible for operating the electricity market. Given the importance of this restructuring for the broader reform of the electricity sector, I have established a dedicated task team under the National Energy Crisis Committee to address the various issues relating to the restructuring process, including clear timeframes for its phased implementation. The Minister of Electricity and Energy, Minister of Finance, and the Minister of the Presidency, and other ministers will all work together to make sure that we come up with clear proposals and timelines and how this will be phased in terms of implementation. This task team will report to me within 3 months. In addition, we will this year commence the first round of independent transmission projects to enable private investment in expanding our national grid. There has been tremendous interest. There's been tremendous interest in investments in our transmission process. We will work in each province to address transformer overloading, illegal connections, and equipment failure with the objective of eradicating load reduction by next year. We are committed to the path that we have embarked upon to modernize our energy system. We have begun to turn around the performance of our rail system and ports so that our businesses can get their products to global markets. We've now enabled private rail operators to access our network on a concessionary basis, which will now allow different rail companies to compete to move volumes from road to rail. Later this year, we will initiate major public-private partnerships in our port terminals and rail corridors through a concession model that preserves public ownership by the state while mobilizing private investment and expertise. Last month, we concluded a partnership with an international port operator to manage the Durban Pier 2 container terminal, the largest in our country. Yes, Pier, you're right. This partnership, something good also comes from your side. This partnership will result in new investment in equipment and infrastructure at the port and will bring it back to world-class standards. We continue preparations for the introduction of high-speed rail in South Africa. I know you love this one. Now this, I've been saying that we would like this to cover initially routes such as Johannesburg and Musina and eThekwini to Johannesburg. Now, it often takes, high-speed trains are happening in many parts of the world. They've cut down the time of travel, and in my book, it should no longer take 5 to 6 hours to travel from eThekwini or Durban to Johannesburg, 4.5 hours from Johannesburg to Messina, when it can be done in a much shorter space of time. Our people want it, and progress is now being made. Nearly 30 companies indicated their willingness to participate in high-speed rail corridors when we put out the request for information last year. We are preparing to send out a request for proposals, which will introduce a new era of long-distance rail travel in South Africa at a faster pace. We are determined to compete in a rapidly changing global economy. Our industrial policy focuses on areas where we have competitive advantage, where we can create jobs, and where we can drive up exports. Our trade policy is aimed at promoting sustainable development, growth, and strengthening our international partnerships. In a world where countries are looking to diversify their supply chains, we have an opportunity to ramp up our exports across the globe. We have a diverse economy, high-quality manufacturing facilities, and strong regulatory frameworks. We are strengthening our capacity for trade negotiations and expanding our missions abroad to drive economic diplomacy. Amid the turmoil in the global economy, we are supporting our established industries in the face of strong headwinds. We have moved to revive our ferrochrome industry and to protect jobs in our steel industry, in our automotive and other sectors which employ hundreds of thousands of South Africans in good quality jobs. Ministers are crunching the numbers on a daily basis, seeking to protect the jobs that could be lost through the decline of these industries that are now facing fierce competition. We are working with businesses and workers to close loopholes in our tariff structure and develop additional measures to protect and grow our manufacturing base. As we protect jobs in vulnerable industries, we remain focused on sectors that will drive future growth. We know that we can create millions of good quality jobs in sectors like agriculture, mining, and services industry, as well as in the green economy. These are areas where we can be more than competitive. We can be the best in the world. Our agricultural sector is expanding rapidly. Already we are the second largest exporter of citrus fruit in the world. We are opening new markets for our exports, from citrus to avocados to maize, livestock, grapes, and wine. Through the blended finance scheme, working with the Land Bank and the commercial banks, we have provided 7.8 billion rand in innovative funding for Black producers. We will deploy 10,000 new extension officers to support farmers and to improve agricultural productivity. This will give rise to many opportunities for young people to be employed in the agricultural sector. I saw how this works extremely well in Ethiopia, in the agricultural sector, which was really the worst sector. They employed 40,000 or so extension officers who support farmers. And all of a sudden, agriculture has now become the best performing sector in their economy. While the rest of our agriculture is thriving, the cattle industry today is facing one of the worst outbreaks of foot and mouth disease our country has ever experienced. This disease is damaging our economy, resulting in export bans, trade restrictions, and the devastation of herds. We have decided to vaccinate the entire national herd of 14 million cattle. This requires 28 million vaccines over the next few months. The state will facilitate the acquisition of the vaccine centrally to ensure that we get the right vaccine for the particular strain of the virus in South Africa. Like during COVID, many people felt tempted that they wanted to acquire vaccines for themselves. But because we are a regulated economy and country, we wanted everything to be approved by our authority, SAPRA. Similarly, in this case, with cattle vaccines, SAPRA, our authority, will be the one single organization that will give approval. We will work closely with the private sector to enable an efficient rollout, and most importantly, we will ensure that commercial, private, and communal farmers have immediate access to vaccines. Now, I have established a task team made up of farming organizations, farmer organizations and experts working together with the Minister of Agriculture and his department that will report to me every month about the progress we are making in dealing with the pandemic. Now, why do we do this? We do this because we've got experts. We've got people with great knowledge. We need to mobilize them. We need to bring them to work with government because they have the know-how and the wisdom. We have classified foot and mouth disease as a national disaster and will be mobilizing all necessary capabilities within the state to deal with this crisis. Our services sector, from digital technology to financial services, is growing. Our financial institutions are some of the best in the world, and they have the ability to compete in Africa and across the globe. We are attracting major investment in digital infrastructure with 55 data centers already built and more than 50 billion of investment expected over the next few years. Tourism is a vital driver of economic growth. With every 13 international tourist arrival, they support one job. Our tourism sector made history last year, recording the arrival of 10.5 million visitors from overseas. We must now promote unique cultural, historical, and natural attractions of our country to reflect our country's identity. This can include traditional festivals, cultural areas in our country, local crafts, historical sites, and natural landscapes across the country in rural areas as well. As we strengthen our criminal justice system, we will make areas safer for tourists to visit. In the coming year, we will extend the electronic travel authorization system to all countries that require visas, enabling applications for tourists to be processed digitally within a 24-hour period. Now, the biggest opportunity of all lies in the green economy. We are pivoting economy to rely on in decades to come. We are expanding support for manufacturing of green products for global markets, from fertilizer to jet fuel, chemicals to steel. From March this year, we will introduce 150% tax deduction for investment in new energy vehicles, while supporting the local production of batteries as well. International pledges to the just energy transition investment plan now stand at approximately 250 billion rand. This is financing large-scale investment in infrastructure as well as skills. South Africa has become the world's largest reserve of critical minerals. Our ore reserves are valued at more than 40 trillion rand, making mining a sunrise industry. After many years of declining investment in exploration, we are dedicating funds towards geological mapping and exploration to harness our critical mineral reserves. Just this week, the Industrial Development Corporation announced more than 300 million rand in funding for the Frontier Rare Earths project in the Northern Cape. This has the potential to become one of the largest and lowest cost new producers of minerals that are needed for smartphones, lithium batteries, and other products. Confidence in the future of South African mining was very evident during the mining indaba this week here in Cape Town. New gold, copper, rare earths, platinum, and coal mines are being opened. And Black people are players, serious players in this industry now of late. And we are happy about that. At the G20 Leaders Summit in November last year, the G20 countries supported our proposal to expand local beneficiation of critical minerals and the export of finished goods. Critical minerals beneficiation that should take place at the source of extraction, right where the minerals are found. Over the course of the first 5 South African investment conferences, we were able to raise 1.5 trillion rand in investment commitments. To date, over 600 billion that was committed has flowed into projects. New factories, mines, and other facilities are being opened each year. We have now set ourselves a target of raising 2 trillion rand in new investments over the next 5 years. We therefore look forward to hosting the 6th South African Investment Conference on the 31st of March of 2026. To build a more inclusive economy, we're going to back those who create opportunity. If every small and medium business in South Africa could employ 1 additional person, we would create 3 million new jobs. But many of these businesses, a number of which are owned by women and young people, cannot get funding to start or to grow. Many struggle to find markets for their goods and services, and nearly all small and medium enterprises have to contend with a multitude of regulations, of bylaws, of licensing requirements, and bureaucratic hurdles. We take seriously the public comments on the draft business licensing bill and will ensure that the final bill makes it easier, not harder, to start and to run a small business in South Africa. We will do that. This year, we will provide more than 2.5 billion in funding to over 180,000 small and medium enterprises and extend a further 1 billion in guarantees. Naturally, we will seek to also focus on women and youth-led businesses to foster their empowerment. And we will amend the National Credit Act regulations to make it easier to access credit at a lower cost. The transformation of our economy is necessary to drive sustained growth, to reduce inequality, and correct the injustices of the past. We are undertaking a review to refine, realign, and strengthen our broad-based Black economic empowerment framework to ensure that it supports greater transformation and inclusive growth. Now, all these actions will create a stronger economy and fix the foundations that were broken. It is a matter of national concern that too many South Africans remain unemployed and too many young people struggle to find their first job. That is why we are rebuilding the economy. We are creating work and livelihood opportunities on a scale through public and social employment programs. In places like Standerton in Mpumalanga, the presidential employment stimulus is creating work that matters, turning dumping sites into parks and empty yards into community gardens. The SA Youth Platform has provided millions of young people with access to work and learning opportunities for the first time. The Youth Employment Service, a partnership between business and government, placed over 200,000 young people in year-long work experience opportunities. This year, we will introduce regulatory changes that will make it much easier for businesses to participate in the Youth Employment Service and create jobs for young people. In the coming year, we will expand our public employment programs, including the Community Works Program and the EPWP and the Presidential Employment Stimulus. We will ensure that they are better coordinated, provide income support, skills development, and pathways into longer-term work, particularly for young people and women. To ensure that no one is left behind, we are implementing decisions to increase employment equity targets for persons with disabilities in the public service to 7% by 2030, and to mandate a 7% preferential procurement target across all government and public entities. Above all, however, a strong economy relies on a well-educated, capable, and skilled population. Our focus now is on establishing a firm foundation for learning in the early years of a child's life. We are expanding access to early childhood development through the Bana Pele mass registration of ECD facilities and an increase in subsidies for ECD learners. By making grade R compulsory, we are getting all our children off to a good start. We are intensifying efforts to fix the basic education system with a focus on early learning, literacy, numeracy, and mother tongue-based bilingual education. Now, we must congratulate the matric class of 2025, which achieved an 88% pass rate. Now, this is the highest pass rate in our history, reflecting both commitment of the learners and the interventions we have made to improve learning, but we also congratulate them for the sacrifices they themselves have made to get where they are. As we welcome improvements in at the high dropout rate in the last few years of schooling, more learners must be able to write matric and take subjects like maths and science. That will enable them to progress further. To enable the youth today to transform our society and secure their future, we are preparing the ground for a skills revolution. We are undertaking a fundamental overhaul of the skills development system to implement a dual training model that integrates education with practical workplace experience. Now, this will enable young people, as they are trained for skills, to be almost certain that they will get jobs once their training has happened. We will reform and reduce the number of sector education training authorities, SETAs, to improve governance, strengthen industry participation, raise the quality of training, and better align skills development with the needs of the economy. Now, this includes improving the use of TVET colleges as the primary sites for occupational training and artisan development. To support effective workplace learning, we will increase the proportion of the skills development levy returned to employers, restoring it to its original level of 40%. We will also transform the National Skills Fund into a more agile, outcomes-driven instrument that supports unemployed young people to access workplace experience and employment, building on successful initiatives such as job boosts. These reforms will ensure that various training programs that we have in government are a door to opportunity, not a dead end. To absorb the increasing number of young people passing matric, we will expand opportunities for young people to enter institutions of higher learning. I have directed the Ministers of Finance and Higher Education to work on a proposal for us to build more universities and TVET colleges for specialized areas of focus. An immediate problem is the great shortage of student accommodation at our institutions of learning. I have also directed the Minister of Higher Education to address this challenge, working together with financial institutions on innovative methods in which government can provide student accommodation. A stronger South Africa is built on strong communities, and strong communities look after their children. More than a quarter of children under 5 years are stunted, increasing their risk of disease and affecting their ability to learn and to grow. Now, this is devastating for children and their families and has an impact on our society as a whole. This year, we will embark on a mission to end child stunting and malnutrition by 2030 and tackle malnutrition amongst young children in line with the national strategy to accelerate action for children. We will focus on the crucial 1,000 days of a child's life, building on existing support such as this Child Support Grant. We will implement targeted interventions to ensure that pregnant women and low birth weight children get the protein and nutrients that they need. This is a massive crisis that demands attention and resources. Now, the medium-term budget statement that will be presented by the minister later this year will set out a clear allocation for the actions that we need to take. A major contributor to child stunting is excessive alcohol consumption, which can affect a child's development during pregnancy. Alcohol abuse leads to violence, leads to road accidents and crime. Now, to address this scourge, we call on provincial governments to strengthen the regulation of alcohol by limiting the density of alcohol outlets, restricting trading hours, and ending the sale of alcohol in large containers. As national government, we propose measures to curb excessive alcohol use, including minimum unit pricing or higher excise duties and greater restrictions on alcohol advertising, which we are consulting with the stakeholders. Now, since it was introduced during COVID-19, the Social Relief of Distress Grant has kept millions of South Africans out of food poverty. As a transformative instrument to improve the lives of the poorest and the most vulnerable people, this grant will be continued into the future. This year, we will redesign the grant to more effectively support livelihoods, skills development, work opportunities, and productive activity. We know that most of the money provided through the social grants is spent on food and transport. In our cities and towns, most people live far away from workplaces and services. We are remaking our cities and reducing the cost of living for working families by expanding affordable housing and revitalizing commuter rail. We are introducing a new model for housing where people are given subsidies for ownership and rental in areas that are suitable for them. We are shifting from building houses for people to supporting them to build, to buy or to rent their own houses. Yesterday marked the 60th anniversary of the declaration of District 6 here in this city as a wide group area. A couple of 100 meters from here where we are, more than 60,000 residents were forcibly removed and relocated to the Cape Flats. The destruction of District 6 is a painful reminder of our shared responsibility to redress the injustices of the past and to build vibrant and cohesive communities. The restitution claim lodged in 1998 affirmed the lawful right of former residents of District 6 and their descendants to come home. That return has required court supervision, detailed planning, and sustained public investment. Many homes have now been completed and handed over to verified claimants. With 500 million rand allocated to this work, we are proceeding with phase 4 of the construction. The restoration of District 6 is a goal we all seek and a responsibility that we must all shoulder. We are working to build a healthy nation. As part of preparation for the National Health Insurance, we are investing in health facilities, in personnel and systems to improve access to quality care. We will be undertaking substantial investment in health infrastructure, prioritizing the construction and revitalization of our academic hospitals. On a recent visit that I undertook, led by Minister Motsoaledi, to George Mkhari Hospital in Ga-Rankuwa, I witnessed the dire effects of inadequate health infrastructure. Starting with George Mkhari Hospital, we will be working with various public and private financing institutions to finance the building and revitalization of that hospital, as well as other healthcare facilities. Now, as a nation, we are finally able to imagine a country without HIV/AIDS. In support of our program to prevent and ultimately to eliminate HIV, we will be undertaking a massive rollout of lenacapavir, a 6-monthly injection that has proven highly effective in preventing transmission of HIV. We are also working to end cervical cancer in our country by mobilizing society to ensure that every young girl between the ages of 9 and 15 receives HPV vaccine. Last year, we classified gender-based violence and femicide as a national disaster. Now, through this classification, we are able to better coordinate our response and direct efforts towards the most impactful interventions. Building on the National Strategic Plan, we will mobilize all sectors of society through communication and social mobilization to challenge harmful attitudes and practices. We will continue to promote women's economic empowerment through training, financial support, and preferential procurement. We will strengthen law enforcement through faster investigation, improved case management, expanded sexual offenses courts, and action against repeat offenders. We will scale up survivor center support, ensuring access to shelters, one-stop service centers, mobile and rural outreach, and the placement of social workers in our police stations. Illegal immigration continues to pose a risk to our security, our stability, and economic progress. We will address this problem while ensuring that the fundamental rights of every person in this country are upheld and protected. This year, we will take additional steps to secure our borders. Funding to strengthen border security will be prioritized, covering infrastructure, technology, and people. Now, key border posts will be redeveloped through public-private partnerships, and we will extend the electronic travel authorization to all international airports and the busiest land ports of entry. We are already using drones and technology to greater effect all along our borderline. The police, home affairs, and labor inspectors will work together to crack down on violations of existing immigration, labor, and other laws. Employers who hire foreign nationals without the required permits or visas will face the full might of the law. Now, to tighten enforcement, we will hire an additional 10,000 labor inspectors this year. As we undertake these interventions, we insist that the laws of our country must be observed by everyone. We will not tolerate violence and acts of lawlessness directed at foreign nationals. No foreign national should be unlawfully barred from accessing public facilities, including health facilities and schools. To build a stronger South Africa, we need an ethical and capable developmental state. A capable state needs committed and honest public servants with the right skills and a deep culture of service. Over the past year, we have passed significant new legislation to professionalize the public service. The Public Service Amendment Bill will protect key appointments from political interference and ensure that capable and qualified people are appointed to senior positions on the basis of their suitability for the job. Lifestyle audits have been made mandatory for senior public servants, reaching 93% compliance across departments. We are establishing a central registry for disciplinary cases across all spheres of government. This will prevent people who are facing or have undergone discipline action from being employed elsewhere in the state. We are continuing to improve governance and performance of state-owned enterprises like Eskom, Transnet, Denel, PRASA, and others. This includes the implementation of clear standards of appointment to ensure that the leaders of these entities have the right qualifications and experience. We will continue to work in a phased manner towards a centralized model of managing our SOE portfolio so that we can set standards, improve governance, and ensure financial sustainability to deliver on their mandates. This includes finalizing the National State Enterprise Bill, which will be done in this Parliament. We will harness digital transformation as a driver of growth, of inclusion and effective service delivery. This year, Home Affairs will launch the Digital ID to enable safe and secure use of digital services for all South Africans. We will digitize driver's licenses, matric certificates, and services at the master's office. Citizens will be able to fill out police statements online and eligibility for SASSA grants online and be tested remotely. All these services will be made available by my Mzansi platform. Soon, every South African will be able to access many of the services they need without having to visit a government office or filling out manual forms. This year alone, hundreds more bank branches will now offer smart IDs and passport services, decreasing queues and waiting times. We will also work with civil society to ensure that citizens' protections and rights are safeguarded through this digital revolution. For South Africa to be strong, our continent, Africa, must be at peace and it must prosper. To advance the values of our Constitution, to promote our national interests, we seek a world that is sustainable, just, and inclusive. In an increasingly volatile world, South Africa holds firm to the principles that defined our G20 presidency and underpin our foreign policy, which is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Now, through our position in the African Union and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, we are advancing regional integration, peace, and stability. We know that we are using our international relations to support domestic economic priorities, including manufacturing, value addition, and export growth. We are contributing to the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area to expand trade between African countries, to drive industrialization, and to create jobs. South African firms, our banks, our farmers, our manufacturers will be leading suppliers to an African market of 1.4 billion people whose working age population will double in the next 25 years. We are building mutually beneficial relations with all countries on terms of equality and respect. Now, in a world where powerful nations often assert their dominance and influence over less powerful nations, our country's commitment to sovereignty and self-determination is sacrosanct. It is not negotiable. And we will stand firm on our sovereignty and promote our national interests, our values, and the rights of our people. We are clear that we will continue to respect the rights and sovereignty of other nations. But we must be equally clear that we will not be bullied by any other country in the world. We will forge strong partnerships with like-minded countries to increase our shared resilience to global disruptions. Building on our presidency of the G20, which all attest to having been very successful, we continue to advance the priorities of the Global South. Now, these include inclusive growth, debt relief, climate action, reform of global governance institutions, and the beneficiation of critical minerals at source, as we said. Drawing on the work of the G20 Extraordinary Committee on Global Inequality, we are working with other international partners towards launching the International Panel on Inequality. This is an important pillar of the global effort to reduce inequality within and between nations. We continue to champion multilateralism and strengthen humanitarian diplomacy. South Africa remains clear and a consistent voice for international law, for justice, and for human rights. South Africa will continue to support conflict prevention and peacekeeping efforts of the United Nations, the African Union, and SADC. We are proud of the participation of South African soldiers in peacekeeping missions in many parts of our continent since the advent of democracy. We have requested the United Nations to allow us to withdraw our troops from the UN mission in the DRC, where they were serving under MINUSCO, with a view of consolidating our own defense force and strengthening it. We cannot consider ourselves free as long as the people of Palestine, of Cuba, of Sudan, and Western Sahara, and elsewhere suffer occupation, oppression, and war. So, fellow South Africans, our nation has reached what many people are saying is a turning point. We are leaving behind an era of decline and turning towards an era of prosperity and growth. We have done much to overcome the effects of state capture, COVID-19, and the public unrest of 2021, and the devastating floods of the following year. We are turning towards hope, towards the reality of a better future for all. The progress we have made over the last 5 years does give us hope and encouragement. It shows what we can achieve when we work together. Now is not the time to rest. Now is the time for all South Africans to be part of taking our country forward. Last year, we embarked on a new chapter in our democracy, launching a national dialogue at a convention that brought together South Africans from across the country, representing all sections of society. Now, this year, this national dialogue process will spread across South Africa, reaching every community, every school, every university, every college, and every part of our society. Under the guidance of the Eminent Persons Group, consisting of prominent, respected South Africans, and led by an inclusive steering committee, these public dialogues will give the citizens of our country the opportunity to raise their concerns, their aspirations and plans for the future. These public dialogues will culminate in a national convention where all these conversations will be brought together to outline the actions that we must take to build a better South Africa. These conversations will guide the formulation of an overarching national compact and the next phase of the National Development Plan by 2030. In building this national consensus, we must draw not only on the shared values of our Constitution, but on the unifying power of sport and the rich diversity of our culture. As we celebrate those who have reached heights of global achievement amongst us, we must appreciate how sport and cultural activities have helped to build a cohesive society, harnessing the spirit of the women of 1956, the youth of 1976, and the people of South Africa in 1996 when they drafted the Constitution. The year 2026 must be a year of transformative change. This must be the year that we make South Africa stronger, not weaker. We must fix what we must fix. Local government. We must fight crime and corruption and restore trust in the criminal justice system. We must create jobs and livelihoods for every South African. And we must build a state that works for all the people of South Africa. Above all, we must ensure that this rising tide lifts every South African. As the economy grows, it should bring into its fold those who have lived on the margins. This is the time for all South Africans to rise, and we must rise together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable members. You may take your seats. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. The House is still in procession. Order, honorable members. I thank the Honorable, the President, for a well-delivered State of the Nation address. After I have adjourned this joint sitting, members are requested to rise and remain at their places until the procession has left the chamber. The guests in the gallery should remain seated until the judiciary has left. The ushers will then indicate when doors are open. The procession led by the usher of the Black Rod and the acting Sergeant at Arms will leave the chamber in the following order: the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the President, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Deputy President, the Secretary to Parliament. Honorable members, that concludes the business of the day. The joint sitting is adjourned.